Hey you, do you remember Plants vs. Zombies? One of the most popular games of the 2000s and one of the first huge indie success stories? Since its release in 2009, it cemented its place in the Gaming Hall of Fame as one of the most popular tower defenses ever, right alongside Funny Monkey Game, of course. Well, today I want to talk about its sequel. No, not that one, or that one, or that one, or that one, or that one. Christ, why are there so many of these? No, the game I want to talk about today is Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. Today marks 10 years since the game's initial release, which absolutely blows me away considering I still remember having the time of my life playing it as a kid. And I gotta say that even after a decade, the series is still great. The first game came seemingly out of nowhere, and for a third-person shooter spin-off of a tower defense game, it did shockingly well, selling about 8 million copies in just 2 years. After which, it got a direct sequel, which is surprisingly still thriving today, averaging several hundred concurrent players daily on Steam. Since it was pretty much a direct upgrade to the original Garden Warfare, adding new classes, weapons, accessories, maps, a single-player mode, and so much more, I'm mostly just going to talk about the second game. I mean, the only thing it really lost was a few good maps and the Cheeto DLC. But anyways, let's jump straight into the game and what makes it so truly epic. Starting with the characters, from Garden Warfare 1's cast, we have the peashooter, who shoots peas that explode into splash damage. He can launch a beam bomb that explodes after a few seconds, plant himself in the ground and go Gatling mode to shoot crazy fast, or become hyper, allowing him to run super fast and jump super high. The Sunflower, who's the TF2 medic with a machine gun that can plant herself in the ground to channel the power of the sun to fire a laser from her face, and also give birth to a potted sunflower to heal her. The Chomper, who went from looking like this cute little thing in the first game to being this nightmarish beast in Garden Warfare. He's the plant's melee character, and by attacking enemies from the back, he can insta-kill them at the cost of suffering a really lengthy animation, leaving him vulnerable. He can also plant weeds to ensnare enemies, spit goo to slow enemies down, and burrow underground and emerge under enemies to insta-kill them. And lastly, the Cactus, which is the game's sniper. He can plant potato mines to blow up enemies, remote control a 5 HP garlic drone that can shoot at zombies and call down literal airstrikes, or grow a tall nut to block zombies and incoming damage. Then, on the zombie side, we've got the footsoldier, aka the most basic of the characters, but the best of them, who can throw a smoke grenade, propel himself super high, and fire a rocket that practically insta-kills on contact. The engineer, whose most defining feature is that you get to stare at his crack all game long. Yep, there it is, all game long. Similar to the peashooter, his weapon shoots slow, splash damage projectiles. He also has a stun grenade, can move super fast while riding his jackhammer, and can ground himself to enter a high DPS turret mode. The scientist, who's the closest thing that the zombies get to a healer. He's got something akin to a shotgun and can pick one of the Sunflower's 2 healing abilities, but he can also do some calculations for a second to teleport forwards and throw a sticky mine. Lastly, there's the the allstar, who's equipped with a minigun, can punt an exploding imp forwards, charge at the enemy, or spawn a dummy to act as a shield. These 8 characters made a great foundation for the first game, but the best part is that that wasn't all. The real me of the game came from what it called variants, which at a first glance sounds like a weapon system, but brings a lot more to the table. Every character has a few of the more basic variants, such as those that deal fire damage, freeze enemies, shoot toxic projectiles, fire arc lightning, have increased attack speed, have more max health, etc. Now, this may not seem big, but it allowed for things like the Sunflower, a healer, to become a tank, or the Cactus, a sniper, to gain AoE damage. It was a great way to let people experiment with various playstyles, and could even help them ease their way into exploring new playstyles. For example, look at the Power Cactus, the AoE sniper I mentioned earlier. If you usually play snipers and try out Power Cactus, you might see how good he is at dealing with groups, which could in turn encourage you to try out peashooters who trade off their range and shot speed for increased fire rate and splash damage. Each class also had a few really unique variants. For example, 2 of my favorite peashooters are Agent P and Plasma P. Agent P gets all of peashooter's abilities, but instead of having these big, slow peas that he fires, he shoots hit scan projectiles that lack splash damage at a way faster fire rate for crazy DPS. Plasma P, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He can charge up his attacks to do up to triple damage, and his fully charged projectiles that miss even implode after a second, dealing an extra 1.5 times damage. Having so many of these variants, totaling to 69 Garden Warfare 1, haha, shut up, really allowed people to play the game in whatever way they wanted to. But that brings us to the question of how to unlock these variants. And the answer is gambling! Yeah, baby! Thanks EA for fueling my gambling addiction. But yeah, you unlock these characters by purchasing sticker packs, which may contain spawnables, which are so insignificant in my opinion that I'm not going to explain them, accessories, I'll get back to that later, a part of a character, or a whole character, depending on the type of pack you buy. It's a pretty decent system actually, since most of the characters are pretty balanced and fun to play, so you never feel like you're being cheated out of your money. Also, given that you collect enough coins to buy a character about every hour or so, the game really doesn't have a chance to get stale for the first few dozen hours. But now, let's transition to Garden Warfare 2, which adds 6 new classes giving a total of 121 playable characters. The Citron is the weirdest plant, as he has 2 modes you can switch between. In his stereo mode, he has a laser, which is really annoying to aim because it lags behind the crosshair and does almost no damage from afar. He can also use a portable shield and shoot an EM Peach, which stuns nearby enemies just like the Engineer. But his second form allows you to play Super Monkey Ball, and charge a dash that hits enemies for a ton of damage. The Rose is a more support-focused class. She uses aimbot because as long as your attacks are somewhere in the circle and the enemy is close enough, then her bullets will home in on them. She too can stun enemies by freezing time, become untouchable for a short duration of time while dishing out damage in exchange for reducing that duration, and, oddest of all, turn zombies into goats. Lastly, there's Kernel Corn.
It's grow time.
Equipped with a full auto machine gun, he can call down airstrikes, do the sickest backflip ever, and launch corncob rockets. And yes, he basically is the plant's version of the footsoldier, since the footsoldier was the best class in Garden Warfare 1. Then, for the zombies, we've got the Imp, one tiny little piece of crap that's really hard to hit and dishes out crazy DPS. He can throw a gravity grenade, which stops enemies from moving, and also do this, I guess. But most importantly, he can summon a mech, making him by far the tankiest character in the game for a short amount of time, while lacking any regen. And the best part is that unlike other characters, each variant's mech has completely different abilities. Then there's Captain Deadbeard, who's got sniper when scoping but shotgun otherwise, which is a really odd combo but surprisingly not broken. He can plan himself to pop up a cannon and shoot explosives, or can jump in barrel and self-destruct shortly after. Also, like Cactus, he's got a drone with an airstrike, which originally belonged to Engineer in Garden Warfare 1. Lastly, there's superbrainz, who's equipped with his fists, while also able to shoot a laser similar to Citron. His abilities include a Hadouken, a flying kick, and the turbo twister, where he just flat out becomes a Beyblade. These 6 new characters add a lot to the gameplay, even if they were a bit more situational than the base 8 and didn't get as many variants as them. These characters also ended up adding a lot to the theming. Just like PvZ 2, Garden Warfare 2 was themed around time travel. Each pair of characters was themed around a different time period. Citron and Imp are from the far future, Rose and Deadbeard from the distant past, and Kernel Corn and superbrainz from like the 40s, I guess? But anyways, the 121 different variants of these characters in Garden Warfare 2 is just the tip of the customization iceberg. There's also tons of alternate abilities, like letting superbrainz fire 3 smaller Hadoukens instead of 1 giant one, tiny upgrades you can equip after gaining a certain amount of experience, and, most notably, accessories. This game's filled to the brim with them, and they're all so wacky that the game just breathes an incredibly goofy charm that can't be found in any other modern shooter. I don't personally use a ton of them, but I always love seeing what other players are wearing. In addition to the characters, the maps were also all really distinct in Garden Warfare 2. In the first game, most of the maps took place in some sort of suburban location. While sure, there was a little variation with 1 or 2 maps at the docks or the Wild West, it really wasn't all too extravagant. But now, we've got a ton of different maps and really diverse and crazy locations like Japanese Garden, Moon Base, Ancient Egypt, crappy theme park that everybody camps on, and mansion from the first game that doesn't let you use any of the new characters. Yeah, those last 2 are generally hated, but otherwise they're pretty good. I really just wish there were more maps because there's not even 20 of them, and it feels like it can get a little repetitive a little fast. But it's barely a problem as the gameplay certainly carries experience. Speaking of, let's discuss the game modes. To preface this, I'm only going to discuss the game modes that made it to Garden Warfare 2 because I don't want to comment on anything I haven't played myself. Now, because of the nature of PvZ, every game mode is team-based. None of them are Fortnite Battle Royale or whatever. You've got your basic game modes like Team Vanquish, where the first to 50 kills wins, Gnome Bomb, where each team tries to blow up 3 enemy locations, or Suburbanation, which is King of the Hill but spread across 3 different points. There's also Vanquish Confirmed, which is like Team Vanquish but requires you to visit the dead body of whoever you kill, and my personal favorite, Turf Takeover. In the first Garden Warfare, this was just called Gardens and Graveyards. It was a callback to the original PvZ, where the zombies basically invaded the plant's gardens one by one up until they reached a home base, which would culminate in some special objective like breaking into Crazy Dave's mansion or freeing a Yeti from its frozen prison. In the second game, they had Herbal Assault, where the plants invade the zombies to complete the game mode now known as Turf Takeover. Additionally, at the start of every month, there's a week-long special mode accessible via the Mystery Portal. I've unfortunately only had the chance to play one of these recently, which was just Turf Takeover with increased movement and attack speed, but it still felt different and fun nonetheless. Garden Warfare also had a few other game modes which weren't PvP. Garden Ops is another callback to the original PvZ, where a team of 4 players defends a garden from a swarm of zombies interrupted every 5 rounds by some combination of 3 different bosses. The second game introduced Graveyard Ops, which was the same thing, but zombies defended. It's a fine mode, but my real problem with it is that it ends after just 10 rounds. It seems like if it were endless, there'd be a far bigger reason to play it with the idea of chasing some high score. But since it only lasts 10 rounds, and the bosses honestly aren't anything spectacular, it really doesn't hold much of a flame to good old PvP. There's also a single player campaign for people like me who couldn't get any of their friends on to play.
Yo, what's good, Jet?
Hey, I was wondering if you want to try Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 with me?
Man, my bad. I got a meeting with my existential crisis, bro. I gotta figure out if playing video games or staring into the void is more productive today. Alright, see ya, dog.
Yo.
Hey, I was wondering if you want to try PvZ Garden Warfare 2 with me?
Sorry, I'm busy.
Hey, I was wondering if you want to try PvZ Garden Warfare 2 with me?
Garden War? Are you for real? PvZ Garden War? Like from 3rd grade? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let me start on my Xbox.
Thank God. Dude, I've been asking people all day and you're the first person to say yes. Here, let me boot up Steam. Give me a second. But anyways, the single player campaign is fine, I guess. Since Garden Warfare 1 didn't have a single player mode, I understand why they added it, but to me it just doesn't feel particularly fun. It's fairly short and its missions are somewhat unique, but the difficulty just never feels right. It's either way too easy, providing you with infinite revives, or way too hard, just absolutely demolishing you. In my opinion, if nobody's online, the best way to play is private play. This mode allows you to play any game mode on any map against a bunch of AIs, which you can customize to a certain extent. For example, you could choose to fight only OG characters, all imps, all electric plants, or even something as wacky as cops and robbers. To top it all off, there's one last thing that Garden Warfare 2 did that really took the game up a notch. That was the Backyard Battleground, a hub world that never existed in the first game that really tied everything together. Even though we may not spend a whole lot of time here, it's still got plenty to offer, whether it's minigames, world building, or simply a bit of exploration. It really does feel like that cherry on top, keeping the player in the moment and making the game feel more cohesive as a whole. Now, with such a great game on their hands, what do you think EA decided to do next? That's right, throw it all in the trash! While EA didn't outright kill it, it did kill the series. In 2019, they had a send-off to Garden Warfare 2 with a 2-month-long celebration featuring a variety of new game modes. And, at the end of it, with no build-up at all, they announced and released Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville, which, frankly, sucks. Firstly, let's discuss the visual style. Everything looks so plasticky and all the characters look just awful. Like, look at what they did to Footsoldier. What is this? Or look at Rose. She looks like she's made of clay now. Or Citron, who's gone from being a cool assassin from the future to that uncle you don't know very well but see every once in a while at family gatherings and they're like, hey, how you doing, kid? And you just stare them down trying to figure out who that arrangement is. You can't place your finger on it, so you just respond with, fine, you, and then they start rambling about how they remember changing your diapers when you were a baby, but you don't remember them in the slightest and swear they didn't exist until 5 minutes ago when they started talking to you. Anyways, gameplay-wise, it also sucks. For some reason, the characters just don't feel that fun to play, and the jump makes you lag in the air for half a second, which just feels absolutely horrible to control. They also gave every character a sprint button, which I originally wanted when playing Garden Warfare 2, but now seeing it, it really just detracts from the characters who could sprint in Garden Warfare 2. Also, the healing system is just really painful. Instead of just always healing really slowly when not taking damage like in Garden Warfare 2, you now have to completely avoid damage for about 10 consecutive seconds, after which you start rapidly healing to full health. This isn't only incredibly difficult to pull off, encouraging you to heavily avoid any action when you're low, but also just seems cheap, since it gets you back to full health in like 4 seconds when you do pull it off. But worst of all, it killed the variant system, the one gameplay aspect that really set Garden Warfare apart from other shooters. I still don't understand why they did it, considering that they still have skins of their game and had over 100 different presets that they could have reused from the past 2 games. As for the new classes, out of the 6 that are available from the get-go, I didn't stick around to try the others. Only 2 of them feel any good to play with, those being Snapdragon, who has a really good close to medium range kit, and 80s Action Hero, who has great DPS abilities and a main attack that does a spread shot when fired immediately, but can be charged up to put all the damage into one sniper shot. And as for the rest of them, Nightcap is bland and doesn't have enough DPS to warrant their low max HP, Oak and Acorn is just a way worse version of Imp, Electric Slide is just a replacement for all the electric variants the game lost, and her abilities are way too utility based anyways, and Space Cadet's melee abilities don't combo well with the rest of her kit at all, and her second form just isn't all that fun to shoot with and has even worse abilities than her base form. Furthermore, a lot of the classes just don't work anymore. Like, look at Superbrainz. He got forced into a melee role as his laser got turned into a shield instead, and at the same time he lost a bunch of mobility by swapping his flying kick out for an uppercut followed by a ground pound that's really hard to aim and leaves him vulnerable in the air. The only redeemable thing about this game is that it has a few good boss fights in its single player campaign compared to Garden Warfare 2, where most of the bosses just charge at you, but that still doesn't really make it worth playing. Battle for Neighborville as a whole was actually received so poorly that EA cut off support for it after just 1 year. As for Garden Warfare 2 though, despite EA cutting off support for it in 2019, it's still thriving today. In 2022, for God knows what reason, it was re-released on Steam, and still maintains several hundred players every day. And better yet, it's on sale for like $5 every month. There have been some issues with it lately regarding hackers and people losing experience on their characters, which is really unfortunate, but getting to relive my childhood in 2024 has been an absolute joy. Even though it may be impossible for us to get a Garden Warfare 3, I'm frankly glad we don't have one, after seeing what went wrong with Battle for Neighborville and what's going wrong with PvZ 3, which just looks so bad. But that's a topic for another day. Hey, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. It would mean a lot to me. And if you want to see more of me, you can either join the Discord link below, or check out my review of another game I think you'll like, Deltarune, an equally goofy but charming game nonetheless.